The functions of verbal communication. The first function of verbal communication is creation. Hi, my name is Paisley, and I'm going to be talking about a function of verbal communication which is called creation. So the first type of creation of verbal communication would be a face-to-face interaction. So the first kind of face-to-face interaction would be where you are going to be physically in the room with someone talking using verbal communication. That would be the first type of face-to-face. Another type of face-to-face interaction would be whether you are FaceTiming or Skyping. That is another type of face-to-face because you are verbally communicating, looking at each other face-to-face, but you're not physically in the room. That's the first type of creation of verbal communication. The second type is using the linguistic relativity hypothesis. What this is that it is language that creates and shapes our social reality. So basically an example of this would be contrasting languages with different cultures. So using our language, English, contrasting that with a different culture. So you could compare and contrast what's the same, what's different. That is what the linguistic relativity hypothesis is. A second type of creation would be that it generates new theories, ideas, words, and concepts. So we create new things using words. There are different ways of inventing new things, but one type is using words. That is how we create new things. A second type of way that we create verbal communication would be how we make new relationships. So, for example, when you meet a new friend, you use verbal communication. You don't just look at them, you meet them, you say, "Hi, how are you?" That is how you can create communication. That is a function of that. That's how you create it. You make new friendships using verbal communication. Last but not least, the last type of creation of verbal communication would be inclusive language. Now what this is that it employs expressions and words that are broad enough to include all the people. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples for you to be able to understand what exactly inclusive language is. The first example would be instead of referring to the disabled as wheelchair-bound people, you could say that they are a person using a wheelchair. Basically, you're saying that they are not bound to it, they're just using the wheelchair. It's a nicer way of saying that. A second type of example would be instead of calling freshmen fishies or freshmen, you could say that they are a first-year student, a first-year college student. That is a nicer way of saying fishies or freshmen. The last but not least would be a stereotypical example, such as calling nurses only women. There are many different nurses, and they are not only women. They are men and women nowadays. They used to be only women, but now they are both men and women. So just being sure that you know what you're talking to and about, because nurses use two different genders. So that is the creation on how we create verbal communication, which is again a function of verbal communication. The second function of verbal communication is participation.
Hi, my name is Ashley. Participation. Participating in a social reality, rely on creating shared understanding so that we can participate with others. Communication allows us to participate in the social world by asserting, promising, apologizing, requesting, expressing, and performing. Providing social support and conforming messages, interacting with others in romantic, friend, family, and work relationships. Organizing social cultures such as families, schools, churches, community, organizations, governments, and corporations. Participation is also listening to others. Overcoming barriers because of cultural and diversity fostered shared realities. And finally, participation is working together as small groups and teams. So basically, participation is when you decide to have a group and you make a project or you do something with them, as well as having interactions with people in the real world, whether it be your best friend, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever it may be, and basically just having conversations with them and not avoiding them And then another point is listening to others. So if someone is talking to you, you are demonstrating good listening skills and you listen to them, you don't interrupt them, nor do you cut them off, so to say. What else? You can create a shared understanding with others, so if you and someone else agree on something, that would be considered participation. And yeah, I think that's about it. So that's participation.
Hi, my name is Brad Simpson and I'll be talking to you about message design logic. There are many different ways one can phrase a message. Depending on the wording and how it is presented can determine how it is received. Even when people are given the same situation, how someone speaks to another can completely change the outcome of the interaction. Message design logics describe the different ways individuals view communication and how that view will make them interact differently with others. There are three different types of message design logics. There's expressive, conventional, and rhetorical. The expressive message design logic relies heavily on the view that communication is used to simply let people know what is on their minds. People who use this type of message design logic are very blunt and say whatever is on their minds without thinking much of how it may affect others. Let's say Jane works at the office I manage. She is frequently late for work or doesn't show up at all, and when she is there, she barely puts any effort. If I had an expressive message design logic, this is how I might approach the situation. Jane, you are by far the worst employee I've ever had the displeasure of working under me. You are useless and a waste of space. Don't even bother coming in tomorrow. Good luck supporting yourself because you're way too ugly to marry rich. So, goodbye and good riddance. That sounded pretty harsh, but that's how expressive message design logic works. Conventional message design logic uses the idea that saying exactly what we are thinking may not be the best way to deal with the situation. It takes into account for what would be socially appropriate to tell another. Let's take the same situation from before, but see how I would approach it with conventional message design logic. Jane, as your boss, it is my responsibility to make sure everyone is here on time and puts in their fair share of effort. I've given you many second chances to get your act together, but you continue to show up late and provide inadequate labor. This is not fair to everyone else who puts in much more effort for the same pay. This is your final warning. If you do not get your act together, I will have to terminate you. Now that seemed like a much more calm professional approach to the problem than simply letting whatever is in our heads spill out. Rhetorical message design logic is when a person tries to reshape a situation by how he or she approaches it. People who use this type of message design logic try to redefine the problem and present solutions. Let's see how someone with rhetorical message design logic might deal with Jane. Jane, you must be going through a really tough time recently. Your absence from work and less than desirable work ethic makes me wonder that there's something at home troubling you and keeping you away from your true potential. I would like to talk tomorrow and see if we can change your schedule to something that's more reasonable for you and see if there's anything else we can do to help you get through this. We value all of our employees and you can trust us. We're like a family here.
Hi, my name is Chelsea. My topic is going to be nonverbal communication. And basically, what nonverbal communication is all the ways that we communicate without using words. This can be really important because it can help convey feelings, emotions, attitudes, or impressions. Um, Nonverbal communication really matters because, in a way, it can be more convincing than verbal communication based off of things like facial expressions, body language, and such. There's 6 different functions of nonverbal communication. The first one would be repeating. An example of that would be like me saying yes and shaking my head yes at the same time. A second one would be accenting, which is basically emphasizing or enhancing a certain point or putting stress on a word. The third one would be conflicting, which is basically me saying like I'm having a great time at this party but shaking my head no at the same time. The fourth one would be complimenting, which is basically reinforcing a verbal message. Like if I'm having a conversation with someone, I might make eye contact with them. I might nod my head in response to what they say, or might lean in forward to show I'm listening, stuff like that. The fifth one would be regulating. An example of that would be like me raising my hand, signaling that I want to say something. And the sixth one would be substituting, which is basically just replacing a verbal message with a nonverbal. An example of that would be if someone asked me where something was and I point in that direction, that would be substituting. So that's basically nonverbal communication.
Hi, my name is Charles Burgess. I'll be showing you some examples of verbal communication. Verbal communication refers to the use of sounds and language to relay a message. It serves as a vehicle for expressing desires, ideas, and concepts. It allows us as individuals to participate in social reality. For example, this is verbal communication, or when Professor Brandon speaks to us in class. This is another example of verbal communication. Here are some clips to show you and give you a better understanding of verbal communication.
Give me one good reason why I should never make a change. Baby, if you want me, then all of this will go away. Just give me one good reason why I should never make a change.
Here are the sources that we use during this presentation. They are listed in APA format.